Welcome into the latest episode of the Five on the Floor podcast on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Make sure to check out all of our content on 5reasonsports.com. That's where you can find our merchandise, all our great Heat shirts. Also, of course, our other podcast, 3 Yards Per Carry, 5 Rings, Kane, Cinco de Zonas, Shula Bowl, just his last episode of the season, but we'll be continuing Fantasy on 5, Balls Cast, Light Skinned Opinions, and more. And, of course, all of our updated stories and columns on the Heat, Dolphins, Hurricanes, Panthers, Marlins, and other South Florida sports. Before we get to today's episode, I want to tell you about a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and that's AutoNation. If you're looking to buy or sell a vehicle, AutoNation is where you want to go. They're the largest auto retailer from coast to coast, and their friendly and knowledgeable staff here in South Florida will help you save big on a huge selection of new cars, trucks, and SUVs, Toyota, Honda, Chevrolet, Mercedes-Benz, and much, much more. And if you're looking to buy pre-owned, shop AutoNation's huge selection of one-price pre-owned vehicles, all clearly marked with one price, their lowest price guaranteed. You want to get rid of that old car, turn it into cash today, get a top dollar offer and a check the very same day. They'll buy your car with no purchase necessary. Here's the biggest thing. Regardless of what you want to do with AutoNation, and you should do something with AutoNation, you've got to DM me at 5 Reasons Sports. We've had some people do this, some listeners. They've had great experience. If you DM me on Twitter at 5 Reasons Sports or email me at 5reasonsports@gmail.com, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to put a AutoNation senior manager directly in touch with you to help you get the car or sell the car that you want to get or you want to sell or you want to lease or whatever you want to do. So DM me, email me, AutoNation, they'll help you out. And now, today's episode.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a Miami Heat and NBA podcast from Ethan Skolnick with Alphonse Sidney, a.k.a. Alf954. Brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back here. I'm with Alex Toledo. We did not pod after the Utah game. All 3 of us had other things to do, but we all saw the game. Just bringing in Alex today. But we're not just going to focus on the Utah game, which got the Heat to 22-8, which was a great performance, particularly at the end by Tyler Hero. Another great performance by Bam Adebayo on a night he didn't shoot all that well. Jimmy Butler doing a little bit of everything again, and Goran Dragic playing big off the bench and making a ton of threes. But we're not going to focus on one game. We want to spin back and spin forward. We're 30 games into the season. The Heat are 22-8. 22-8. Now, best case scenarios for this team, and I was one of the most positive people on this team in the market or anywhere. I know Alex and Alf were as well, or sort of came to that place over the course of the preseason.
No, I'm very negative according to everybody.
Well, I know everybody thinks you're negative. You're really not that negative. It's just everybody used to think I was negative, but because I spun positive on this team, everybody seems
you were definitely more negative over the past couple of years. That's for sure.
For good reason. For good reason. Because this is what the Heat should have been getting to, not that. Now, I didn't anticipate Kendrick Nunn and Duncan Robinson, all that, but I can claim I did. 22-8. 22-8. That's a 61-win pace through the first, I don't know, we're a little past the first third of the season at this point, which is much better than anticipated. But we're not just going to do that, okay, they're playing really well. We're going to look back at the 5 things that we identified as major issues for the Heat coming into this season and where they stand with all of them, because I think it'll give people a little better context of where they are right now and how they got here. So let's start with number 1, Alex. The one that we began with was Jimmy Butler, because he was the most important acquisition of the offseason. He was an acquisition that I thought the Heat would eventually make, but I didn't know they would happen quite that way. They gave up less than I anticipated they would have to give up. There's a great debate to be had. We should probably devote an entire episode to this, but of all people, Dutch Beak, Michael Sonbeek in our network, actually stated this on Twitter. It's the only smart thing Dutch has ever said, which was that the best thing that you concur, right? The best thing that ever happened to the Heat was not making the trade with Minnesota for Jimmy Butler, because of the way that things ended up playing out. You probably make the playoffs. You don't get Tyler Hero. Maybe you go a different direction with some other players. Maybe some of the players that are here right now are not here anymore. Maybe you don't make the Whiteside trade. Maybe Bam is not unleashed. All of those things. I think that's a whole episode we can devote to. But
I mean, could you imagine? They're just like, oh, we still got it. We still believe in Hassan. Everything is different right now.
Oh my God! Please, I mean, shoot me. But anyway,
we're talking about Jimmy and Hassan's compatibility.
Well, actually, yeah. If there was going to be any violence, it might have occurred during one of those practices. But yeah, all right. So let's get to what actually happened was they got Jimmy this offseason, and you and I and Alf all asked the same question. Is Jimmy Butler a true number one? And I think we have to agree, I would believe, after 30 games, that he is. He's just a different type of number one than we anticipated. He's not going to get you 30 every night, but he's making plays for other people every night. He's defending, which we knew he could do, every night. He's making plays down the stretch every night. He's leading in the locker room and at practice and on social media and everywhere else and in the community every day, every night. He's a true number one, is he not?
Yes and no, in a sense. I think Jimmy's been awesome. I think even though that he's kind of struggled to shoot from the field in a, very consistent sense, like you just look at his percentages from different areas on the floor, they're just lower than you would think. Like at the rim, from 3 to 10 feet, from 10 to 16 feet, all of them are a little bit lower than they have been in the past. So there's evidence that that's going to go up, knowing what we know about Jimmy. But he's been good, man. Like I think Spo has utilized him, has weaponized him as this playmaker who he's going to use as the guy to basically penetrate the paint every single time, and that's his role, right? His main function on offense is to penetrate in the paint and either draw a foul, get a good shot in the paint, or kick out to shooters, and it's working because Jimmy is very good at making reads, and I think Spo noticed that from the start, and especially with Winslow and Dragic having time off, made it even more so that Jimmy had to be that playmaker. But I've been very pleasantly surprised with just how much he's bought into the system, to the extent that he's done it at, how quickly it's meshed together. I think he's a huge reason for that. He's never tried to, take over and take all the shots. Like his usage is at a pretty fair amount right now. Like he doesn't have, a usage over 30. It's at about 25 right now. I think he's done a great job just playing a part of the team system, knowing what it takes to win basketball games during the regular season, putting in that effort every night, demanding the best out of everybody. I think he's done a great job. And it feels like it can only go up from here because of what I mentioned before of his shooting percentages being down all across the board. If I had to come to it, would be like a B plus, A minus type of thing, which I think is very good. Like he's been great for them.
Yeah, I would say A minus, but I would trend towards A, honestly, rather than down. I trend up a little bit. I think one of the important things that a number one has to do is know when he should be the number two or the number three. And I think what Jimmy has shown is a great feel for that. When he doesn't have it on a given night, or he just kind of wants to work his way into the game, or doesn't like his matchup as much, or maybe he likes somebody else's matchup, he's going to that guy. And it is, it's LeBron-esque. I mean, he is, in a lot of ways, he's LeBron light, and, that's not disparaging someone.
It's so weird because we say the same thing about Wade, right? Because they have similar play styles, and now we're kind of saying a similar thing about him and LeBron. And maybe it's just the way that Spoelstra utilizes these types of players. He knows exactly how to maximize them.
Yeah, and I think that Dwayne saw some of this in Jimmy, and that's part of it. But I mean, when someone's averaging 26 and 6, LeBron was averaging 26, 7, and 7 with the Heat, right? So I mean, you're not that far off from those numbers. In fact, it's rounding.
And he's averaging 3 steals and a block as well.
Correct. And now the shooting percentages are not LeBron's level. You mentioned that. They're not LeBron's level. The line they are. He's better from the line than LeBron was.
I mean, everything suggested it's going to go up. Like, he's at 28% from 3 this season and just under 44% from the field. So that's definitely going to go up. And like I said before, all different spots on the floor, he's pretty low. So I think that's something that's going to go up, just like, the shooting's gone down. But, yeah, he's done an excellent job. And what you said before is exactly why I said yes and no on him being a number one, because he doesn't always need to be the number one.
Mm-hmm. Right. He doesn't need to be, but I think the sort of understanding of when he does, particularly in the big moments, makes him that. But I think what he's also set himself up for, Alex, is I think he has set himself up to slide over to a number 2 or 3 position permanently if that's necessary, whether it's Bam ascending or Tyler Hero ascending, or whether it's getting a Giannis or maybe an Oladipo who's younger than him, or maybe, I don't know, a Bradley Beal down the road, that he's sort of positioning himself.
There's no doubt in my mind if the Heat were to get somebody of that caliber, that Jimmy would be taking less shots.
Yes.
Just from what we've seen so far, where almost every night there's guys on the team getting more shots than you wouldn't expect. That other night, like we said, 7 people in double digits and he wasn't one of them. There's just been so many instances like that I completely agree with you. I think he would do what's right for the team, because I still think that he knows he's good. The team believes he's good. They treat him like he's really good, and he's going to be their closer. So I think it's just a perfect two-way relationship at this point.
Well, when you take 3 shots and your star takes 3 shots and the team scores 129, something's going right with that team. I don't care who you play. It's just just facts. And I think he's been terrific. He's been better than I anticipated. He's better as a teammate than I anticipated. He's better than was advertised. I think what's been proven, and I'm thinking of writing a column about this for Monday, but I think what's been proven is the problem was the organizations and the players he was with, not him. Because if you look at what's happened, look at the 3 organizations he's not with anymore, okay? Philadelphia is having chemistry issues, right? And Embiid doesn't appear happy, and Simmons is playing Call of Duty or something. I don't know what he's doing, right? And they already want to get rid of Horford, and nothing's working out. And I know the record's good, but it's not working that well. And clearly, whatever issues they had were not Jimmy's fault. Minnesota, after the hot start this year, has gone in the tank again. And you already have questions there about sort of the long-term viability of Wiggins.
You mean to tell me point guard Wiggins wasn't going to work, Ethan?
Right, exactly. Not for longer than a week, right? He had the 1 fourth quarter against the Heat. And then look at Chicago.
He had 5 assists one game, and they went crazy.
Right. And Jimmy's been getting 7 or to 10 consistently. And then look at Chicago, right? Zach LaVine wants to, get out of there because the coach, or at least indicated that. The players Jimmy was acquired for have not developed. It's Markkanen and
It doesn't seem like any of those Bulls players really like the coach. I mean, obviously, we don't know what's going on. We're looking from outside, but there's been so many tweets where people are tweeting out videos from games where players are just looking lethargic. They're not even it looks like they're not even paying attention to what the coach, like they're not looking at him when he's talking to them sometimes, and it's just oof.
Sometimes
it's obvious.
So is it possible then that the problem was in Chicago? You haven't had any stability there. Have you had stability in the front office with Gar Foreman and Paxson? But the
timelines didn't match up with the stability, because they had that roster there. Like if you would have had Jimmy somewhat closer to his prime, along with Derrick Rose still in his prime, Joakim Noah still in his prime, Luol Deng in the back end of his, Boozer, it probably would have worked out a little bit better for them. But it was a mixed timelines, not great circumstances. The Bulls front office sucks. And once that team disintegrated, everything else did. And then you go to Minnesota, and he didn't like what he saw from the rest of the guys. I think he didn't want to be part of somebody who he thought was a clown show. He probably got discouraged by how much they dropped in the standings after he got injured, especially if they're paying and playing Wiggins and Cat like they're more important than Jimmy. And then the same thing happened again in Philly.
Yep.
Except in Philly, I think he appreciated the hard work that they put in, the fact that they were a defense-first team. But at the end of the day, that had more to do with the basketball fit than anything, which is obviously still a problem for them.
But look at the guys that
we don't know if it's ever going to work.
But look at the guys that Jimmy's had issues with. They've been, I think, what he views to be entitled number 1 overall picks, right? Simmons, Wiggins, Towns. Okay.
Yep.
And so, Embiid, who was not drafted first, but could have been if he was healthy at the time, he doesn't seem to have an issue with Embiid. But the others he seems to have an issue with, okay? In Chicago, he developed a relationship with Derrick Rose, but it was very choppy. I mean, if you talk to people there at the beginning.
Here is truly light years ahead. They didn't tank this entire time, and now they don't have to have that problem.
Right, because they can never get a number 1 overall pick, right?
It's just a bunch of 13s, 14s, and undrafted guys playing with Jimmy.
Right. I mean, there's guys who he feels made it up the same way. And so I think that a lot of this we're recognizing is circumstance. It was not really him. I mean, he didn't react well maybe to the circumstances, but I don't blame him for the initial circumstances. All right. Anyway, let's get to number 2 here. This is an interesting one because I think Jimmy has kind of solved this problem for them a little bit. But this problem has persisted. This is the one of the 5 we talked about in preseason that they still had, which was who was the point guard. And the debate at the time that we had, Alex, was Dragic or Winslow. And I think we all 3 of us said they'd be best off with Dragic off the bench and Winslow starting. So the plan that the Heat had was similar to the plan that we prescribed. The problem is that the player we prescribed to be the starting point guard doesn't play and hasn't played in a while. And I just want to address this a little bit because I said this on a previous podcast, okay? It is unusual for the Heat to disclose this little information about a player's injury after this much time. And there are only 2 reasons that has typically happened. 1, the injury is worse than they let on initially, which has happened many times. Okay, that's possible. The second is that the player and the team are not on the same page necessarily with every part of the treatment of the injury. If you recall, that happened with Waiters. It's happened, and I can count a number of examples of this over the years. Okay, Bosch example was extreme because that was illness, but there have been other situations. I've been led to believe it's more the second than the first, and I've said that on a previous podcast when I was doing one with Alf, that there seems to be some inconsistency here in terms of how bad this particular back injury is. I have totally excused Winslow for the head injury because head injuries to me are a whole separate category. I don't know how serious this is, but all I know is that he has not been available enough.
I mean, how have they say that back injuries should be maybe not at the same level as head injuries, but
it's not potentially like threatening to your long term. Well, I guess it could be, right? It could be threatening to your long term sort of comfort, but it's not threatening in the way that
and career, because if this is something that would continue to persist, and I'm not saying it will,
right,
that would definitely affect his career, no doubt about it.
That's true, but I can't diagnose it, but it's not the kind of back injury that was suffered in a collision on the court that we know of, or a stretcher is required or anything. Seems to be, I don't know this, but it seems to be a pain maintenance issue. But perhaps Winslow thinks it's not. And so that's kind of where we are at this stage. But let's get away from that a little bit. I just wanted to address it somewhat.
Even more than that, I think if Winslow was healthy, he still wouldn't be starting. And that's the actual, like, plot development here, right? Because it's like Kendrick Nunn is the point guard now. That's the answer to the question.
But is he? Okay, so how have they handled the point guard issue? Because I don't think Kendrick Nunn's the point guard. I think Jimmy Butler is the point guard.
Well, yeah. I just mean from a starting lineup standpoint, Kendrick Nunn is the point guard. I think it's going to stick. I think Spo's going to stick with what he's done, which is what has worked so well. And I think maybe the way to go about it when Justice does eventually return is, whenever he brings him in the game, try out some of those lineups that you want to see with Justice, Jimmy, and Bam. Like, you don't have to start it, right? You don't have to change everything up that's been working so well for you. They're 22-8. It would at this point. Like, even I would be like, wow, they're starting Justice. They're just good. That's it. They're just good with giving up what they had.
Right. No, it would be
crazy to me because I was 100% on board starting Justice at point guard. And this has nothing to do with Justice play because I don't think we got nearly enough of a sample where everything's just been so shaky with him with the sample size that it's not even about him. It's just we've seen what works and what doesn't. And Jimmy needs shooting around him.
Yeah, he does. And Justice is not a knockdown shooter at this point. I mean, he talked about being a sniper in the preseason and everything else, and then struggled in the preseason, and then obviously got off to the slow start to this season. But I don't mean to keep interrupting you, but I think Spo's done just an incredible job of actually doing what is necessary with this team whenever the time is come. Like right now, whenever Justice does come back, all three of those guys are going to get a lot of playing time, right? Justice, Nunn, and Goran. But I think Spo's going to manage – Spo, the way he manages, like we talked about the other day with the units, I think that's the perfect way to go about it. I think he's doing exactly the right thing. He's not just putting one guy in a box as their point guard, right? I think he's laid it out in this team-friendly system that just goes so perfectly with the roster that they have. And so I think the point guard thing has more developed and evolved into this thing where the whole team – is filled with ball handlers and point guards. Jimmy is the main one because of his penetration, but Spo is getting the most out of his guys. But don't you eventually? This is my question. Okay, so I agree. It's worked in the regular season. They're 22-8. When you get into the postseason, Toronto's going to know that the ball's going to be in Kyle Lowry's hands, right? Milwaukee, I guess, is going to put the ball in Bledsoe's hands when it's not in Giannis's hands. You've got Philadelphia, I guess, is going to put it in Simmons' hands till he's asked to shoot, and then we'll see what happens.
He'll definitely put it in somebody else's hands after that. Boston will put it in Kemba's hands, okay? Indiana, again, I guess it's going to be Brogdon, right, until Oladipo is right.
I guess if we're comfortable that it's going to be in Jimmy's hands when it matters, then it's fine. It was in Dwayne's hands when it mattered. Even when the Heat had Mario Chalmers, it was in LeBron's hands. Even when the Heat had Mario Chalmers or Norris Cole or somebody like that. So I don't think it's that big a deal, and I think Spo's trying to get everybody out of these categories, and so I understand that. But I do think that looking over the course of the season, Goran's probably going to get hurt again. It's just he's had an injury history here for the past 3 years, right? So there, with the Justice thing matters because Kendrick's not playing point guard. Jimmy's primarily handling the ball, particularly in the big moments. And you mentioned the shooting, and I think it's worn on his shooting because the combination of him having to defend the best player on the other team most of the time and handle the ball all the time. His legs look shot to me the other night. Now, they looked better last night against Utah, I thought. But, he needs a little bit more of a break, and it's difficult to get him that break when he has to be the point guard. So I do think it matters. I don't think they have to go out and get a Chris Paul, but I think they need both Justice. I think what the season has shown, they can get by and be really good offensively, but they can't maximize all their players if they don't have somebody besides Jimmy Butler who you can trust to handle the ball. Tyler Hero might get there.
Maximizing Jimmy.
Right, because it's not Jimmy's best skill. He can do it, but it's not his best skill. I want to see Jimmy play off the ball a little bit. I want to see Jimmy in the post a little bit. I think he's really good in the post creating mismatches. You can't do that when you're dribbling the ball up the court all the time. So we don't have to dwell too much on this one, but this is the one of the 5 that has been an issue, but I agree with you that Spo has coached around it, and he's coached around it so well, which is one of the reasons why I think he's a coach of the year right now. He's coached around it so well that it's now we're well, they don't even really need what we thought they needed at the beginning of the year. But I think my opinion is I think ultimately they do. I think they need at least one other guy. I think it's got to be Justice probably that is going to take that step. Maybe Tyler Hero takes that step by the end of the season. He's improved so much, but I don't know that he's there yet. All right, let's get to number
2. I mean, we got to give him that credit.
Maybe he does. I don't think it's his instinct. I think Tyler is more of a playmaker by nature, but you're right. I think it's possible.
Oh, no doubt. But I just mean as far as Nunn figuring out the stuff, a lot of the times the games where he looks better and the other games where, we're not as impressed is because of the way that he's making reads, right? Sometimes he just has it going for him in that sense. He knows exactly when to attack. He's gotten really good at attacking left. Did you see what he was doing to Gobert? He drove in on him and scored lefty twice. And I thought that was ridiculous. But no, him figuring out when to shoot, when to pass is going to be huge because I think that's the main thing next for him, right? That'll maximize him. I don't think it's one skill specifically, just getting more time and making reads. So I think Nunn has just as much of a chance to be that guy in a sense of just somebody who could take the ball handling and scoring load off of Jimmy. But to address what you're saying, I think they need minutes from all 3 of those guys to get that off of Jimmy. I don't think it needs to be one. I do think the question, though, is do you still believe that the ceiling of this team is with Justice Winslow on the floor?
Yeah.
Because that's going to be important. That's what we thought. And now, Derrick Jones Jr. has kind of is it just because he's playing, or has Derrick Jones Jr. kind of taken another step in the ladder that is this team and this roster? Has he taken another step on that ladder?
He has, but save it because we want to get to that on defense. All right, let's get to number 3. And this was another big question that we had before the season. Who is going to be the number 2 on this team? And I think I actually had Giancarlo Navas on with me for this one. And I think we both identified Bam, I believe, or maybe he identified Justice. I definitely identified Bam, if I recall correctly. Now there's the question if he's the number 1 or the number 2. We've obviously gushed all over Bam Adebayo. The numbers are outrageous. Some of the numbers, when you look at what he's done throughout the season, it's like him and Giannis. I mean, some of the numbers that have been spit out. I mean, he's become an elite player in a very short period of time. So let's not dwell on what he's become. We've touched on that in enough podcasts. Give me 2 things that you want to see him improve on over the second half of the season. What will make you think entering the playoffs the Heat have 2 stars?
Well, first of all, I already feel that way. I think you can safely say Bam is a star. But I think when we talk about this thing of 2 stars, the conventional wisdom is that you're talking about 2 guys who can go out there and get their own shot and do things for you by themselves, which is fine. Yes, you would like to have 2 of those guys, and that's probably what's going to keep the Heat from getting into the later rounds of the playoffs. And yes, that's me being negative, I guess, if I still don't believe that they're a finals team per se. But yeah, I do think that Bam is a star already. I think he provides so much value all over the floor on both ends. He's not just a defensive guy, pretty much like what Justice has been. I think Bam has turned into this 2-way dynamic player who's only getting better, and he's already a star. And I don't think it should fall on him to be the number 2 scoring guy. And not that Spo has put it on him, because he definitely hasn't. I think it's obvious that Spo loves using Bam on offense more as a rim roller and as a secondary facilitator / screener, right? More so than a scorer. Because you go look at, the scoring from the rest of the guys on this team. Like, for example, you go to the per 100 possessions and you got like 5 or 6 guys over 22 points a game, including Goran. You got Duncan at 20 points. None is there at 25. Jimmy at 27. Again, this is per 100 possessions. But what that tells you is that this has been 100% a team effort. Again, Spo, his implementation of his system and getting, running a style of offense that absolutely maximizes everybody, where most of the time people are not going, outside of their comfort zone. It's just been, it's been almost flawless. Like, their offense has been so much better than we thought it was going to be. Their defense has been great despite missing time from Dion and JJ, who were plus defenders, despite Justice missing time, despite Derrick Jones Jr. missing time. Like, they've been so impressive on both ends. And as far as number 2 matters, I think this team has shown you there is no number 2 as far as a number 2 scorer, right? Bam is definitely the number 2 star, but they're depending on scoring from all across the board, and there's no doubt about it.
Well, I think there have been great teams where the second best player has not been the second best scorer. You can take a look at
the Pistons.
The Pistons is a really good example, actually.
So you can make a case, Ben Wallace is one of those.
Yeah,
two.
I was going to say Ben Wallace. I think that there were it's hard with the Bulls because Pippen was great too in his own way and did so many different things. But there were times Rodman was as important as Pippen in terms of what they did, and basically he was a lot of times their only front court rebounder. So there have been great teams where the second best player is not the second best scorer. I even look at teams that have won titles recently. I mean, you
can say the same thing for the Warriors pre-KD.
Yeah.
When Draymond was considered to be their second best player.
Yeah, he might have been better than Clay. I think it was a push depending on the night. You can definitely make that case. I think at this point, the Draymond Bam comparison is interesting. Bam's upside is much higher than Draymond's. There were comparisons maybe before the season. There are things that we know at this stage Draymond can't do. Now he can shoot a 3 on occasion, and Bam's got to get to that. But he's not.
Bam's going to do it eventually, by the way. We saw those videos pre-draft of him just nailing threes. And obviously that's not something that just 100% translates right away. But it's so obvious that Bam, like if he would have put in that time to actually try to do it on the court, that he could get to a decent catch and shoot percentage from, a couple attempts a game. Which is basically
Chris Bosh didn't get to it until his 3rd season in Miami, right? He'd already spent how many seasons in Toronto? So, you're talking about...
And you hated it.
And don't mind me. Okay, I did hate it. You're right. I hated it. I wanted Chris to get down on the post. I know it reminded me of one of the few things I was wrong about during the Big 3 era. Okay, I was definitely wrong about that one. That's it. We're ending this topic.
Has Spo told you that?
No, I've heard about other things I was wrong.
You wanted Bosh in the post instead of LeBron and Wade.
I didn't want it as inverted. I wasn't positionless. That was the problem. All right, we're going to tell you about another great spot to the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We get to our last 2 topics here. Just had a watch party. We're going to have a couple more. That's the Gold Club in Pompano. It's not far from Powerline and Copans in Pompano Beach. Totally renovated inside. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. And we're not just talking, obviously, about the scenery, but it's not just a gentleman's club. So we don't want to stereotype it. Ladies get in free there all the time. That's right. 7 days a week, 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. They've got a full kitchen there so you can eat. They've got a full bar. And if you come in on Mondays, they've got You Call It on Monday, where basically you pay $5 and they will fill up your glass with just about anything that you want for the entire night. That was not great for our friend Alphonse Sidney on the night of our watch party. So check out the Gold Club in Pompano. Next watch party, I don't know if we're going to do one in January. We're definitely going to do the Sacramento game in February. So they should win that one, so you guys can't complain. We're 2-1 this year, by the way, in watch parties. And we're looking at one other in February that may be kind of an easy one for them.
Biggest upset of the year.
That we're 2-1 in watch parties, and wins against Philadelphia and Milwaukee, Alex. Wins against
on the road.
On the road. Well, yeah, all the watch parties on the road. But, yeah, 2 big wins on the road. We're not going to talk about
against the two best teams in the conference. I mean, you should be bragging about it more, to be honest, for all the shit that you caught for so long.
That's true. Yeah. You're bringing up all the shit that I catch all the time. Yeah, Broward County. We did 2 in Broward County, and they've won both of those because the other one was at GQ's Craft House. The one we lost was in Dade at Duffy's. But anyway, we're going to do another one at Gold Club for the Sacramento game. But go check it out before we get there. That way you'll know how the place works. All right, I'm going to get to the last 2 parts of episode. We'll do these 2 quicker. But the 2 other things that we touched on before the season were shooting and then rebounding/defense. I don't think anybody anticipated they would shoot the ball this well, Alex. I don't know that we thought Duncan Robinson was going to be this big part of the plan. I believed in Tyler Herro, but I didn't know if it would happen quite this soon. I thought that Kendrick Nunn was a rotation player, but didn't know that he would be making 35% from 3 as a starter. They have shot the ball extremely well. They've gotten each other open looks, which is, to me, the most important part of shooting is the pass that comes before it. They move off the ball. Myers Leonard has been terrific in his limited minutes from a shooting perspective. He probably should shoot more. Other than Jimmy, I think everybody on the team is shooting, and Justice, right? Everybody on the team is shooting better than projected. Goran Dragic is suddenly a knockdown 3-point shooter. Do you believe in their shooting now going forward?
Yes, I think so. I think in the beginning it was a little bit, we had to see a little bit more of it. But now, like you said earlier, we're more than a third of the way through, which is not nothing, right? Like, obviously, you can't extrapolate that over a whole season and expect it to translate. Like, I don't think the Heat are going to win 61 games, right? But we've already seen similar regression, and yet they're still really good. They still have 4 guys shooting 40% or higher from 3, including, a 45 in there, a 48 in there. You got Herro at just under 39. You've got Nunn at 35% from 3. They've got a lot of shooting. And I think Nunn's, by the way, percentage being that that much lower than everybody else's is only because of the types of shots that he takes, where he takes a lot of those, the defender drops back off the screen and he pulls up after a dribble. I think a lot of those guys aren't doing that. But they've got shooting all across the board, and it's exactly why their offense has been as good as it is. And again, credit to Spoelstra for recognizing the shooting talent that they have on this team, right? Like, it's there, and he's maximizing. He's getting Duncan Robinson to be Wayne Ellington 2.0, except taller, and, getting blocks for you, and extremely cheap, undrafted. Like, it's just a ridiculous story between him and Kendrick Nunn, the type of shooting and production that they've been able to get in the starting lineup every single night. Like, those guys have been so good for them as release valves. Like, without the shooting that they've gotten from Nunn, Herro, Robinson, and then Myers, who knows, the offense is probably a lot clunkier if you have, just a more similar roster to what you had the past few years.
You mentioned it's been every night, and it's been the point that when they don't get it, we're surprised. So when they didn't get it the first game up in Philadelphia, we were surprised, right? Like, when they have one of those games, like, we got accustomed over the past couple of years to them having some games where they'd shoot under 27% from 3 and take a lot of them and miss a lot of them. Hasn't really happened that often this year. And so now in the playoffs, some of those lanes will shut down. Some of the movement will stop.
They will.
Shots will become harder. You'll also won't have as many of these guys on the floor in some of those situations. But I think what's been encouraging is, for example, Spoelstra's willingness to play Duncan Robinson as a small ball 4 in some of these situations where you get the extra shooter there next to Bam. So can he play in that situation down? And then it's not just the guys we thought would shoot, but like Derrick Jones Jr. is making 3s now. So like if that happens, that raises he's playable in some of those situations. Now, again, I don't know until we see it in the playoffs, particularly until you see it on the playoffs on the road, because we know role players play better, but particularly shoot better at home.
And so it's not just that, right? It's like their offense is so built on guaranteed production from these shooters who you basically had no idea what you were getting coming into the season. Like, you didn't know that Nunn and Robinson were going to be as good. You weren't 100% sure that Herro was going to be this good right away. Like, depending on those 3 guys, like, they're a pretty big piece of the pie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, Jimmy is a number 1, yes, but again, they're playing a team-oriented offense, and I think, like you said, those passing lanes are going to shut down. I think that ball movement is going to come to a grinding halt, and I think that's why, like, I've had so much trouble going back and forth on how good this team truly is, because I projecting in a playoff environment, what is that offense going to look like? Are you going to get those same cuts and passes off of those actions that you've been doing, right? I think you're going to be heavily scouted. I think teams are going to know exactly what actions you like to do a lot. And yes, Spo is great at kind of throwing teams off, at doing different things when he feels that the team is sussing out what he's doing, in a playoff environment. But yeah, that's definitely going to be, what you got to monitor going forward, especially if you're trying to see how good this team really is.
And we're not going to know. I mean, we're not going to know until they get there. Like, you can see a little bit more of it in a clutch situation against Utah. You can see a little bit more of it on the road in Philadelphia.
By the way, great win, because the Jazz are a great defense. So always getting a win against an elite defense like that, where they've got great defenders all across the board. They've got Gobert there in the paint. Just a great win for them. They keep racking up wins versus good teams, even though Utah has been terrific. The fact that they've been able to score against very good defensive teams, it's a great sign.
Yeah, so let's get to the next one here, the final one, rebounding and defense. We worried about the loss of Hassan in these two areas, and we thought this is the one place it could hurt them. It hasn't hurt them in any meaningful way, except that they're not particularly good at the rim. But what all the numbers show is they're not letting people get to the rim as much. Part of that, I think, is because Bam jumps out on everybody, so nobody gets past him. But the other thing is that they're not getting to the rim even though they haven't had justice for the majority of the season at this point. Rebounding and defense, sustainable from where it has been so far this season.
Defense, absolutely. I think whenever you get justice back, it's only going to improve the defense. I think the more time that they get with each other, the more familiar that they're going to get, with that system that they run, just very much based on communication and discipline. And that's something that's only going to get better, especially when you're talking about two rookies on this team, right? And basically three, because Duncan Robinson didn't get significant playing time last season. And you're relying on them for so many minutes. Like, it's only going to get better with time. And especially since all those guys have been, pretty decent at it on the defensive end. It's only going to get better. As far as rebounding goes, they're a good rebounding team. They've been in the top 5 in rebounding percentage all season. But I do still think it's going to be a little bit of an issue versus bigger teams. I don't believe that this team is a team that's going to out-rebound everybody on a given night. I think, in a matchup versus obviously Philly or Milwaukee or even Toronto, they might get out-rebounded just because they don't have that size. And I don't think Myers or Kelly are very good rebounders. But you get it from other places, right? Like, Justice is good for the position he plays. Hero is good for the position he plays. Derrick Jones Jr. is a great rebounder. Jimmy's a good one. Bam is good. So they get it from other places. They get enough where it isn't a problem for them. And like I said, they've been top 3 in rebounding percentage all season, which, again, credits to Spoelstra. The system is perfect for the roster. That all the deficiencies that we thought would be there have not been there. And that's a credit to coach.
Even with them not having all of them healthy. Now, I think a couple guys we want to take into account here as we talk about these two things. The first one is Derrick Jones Jr., because I think his development defensively in the games he's played has made a big impact. And it also makes an impact for them, I think, rebounding, particularly as an offensive rebounder. That's a positive. I think the only negative I would really say on this team right now is I really, at this point, Alex, and I don't want to pick on him, but I want to see more consistently from Kelly Olynyk. There were some situations last night against Utah that he just got outworked for defensive rebounds.
It's weird, right? He's in a weird position right now. He's still shooting 41% from 3 on the season, which is terrific because, it wasn't always that way. His percentage wasn't always that lethal. But that's basically what they've been using him as, is a stretch 4. Whereas the past few seasons, they've used him as somebody who helps facilitate their offense. So I would expect that when Justice comes back and they have that full bench lineup back together, I think it would get a little better for him. But honestly, I don't think he's that much of a problem because he's still getting – he's averaging more rebounds a game than Myers, but that's only because he gets 3 more minutes a game than Myers.
Right.
But again, those two guys, it's weird because they're not 4s because they can't guard 4s for the most part. Maybe Kelly can sometimes against slower guys, but they can't guard 4s. And at the same time, it's tough to put them at 5 because they're not great rebounders.
And Yeah, and I think looking at it, could you see more of Silva going forward if they're having rebounding difficulty? I just maybe it's aesthetic with him. I'm not sure. I've always liked his game. I just haven't seen him. There's too many nights that I'm coming out of this saying he's not making an impact that the other guys are. You may be right that it may be positional. The ball's not in his hands quite as much as it was before. But rebounding wise, like I feel like with Leonard. And look, Leonard's had some games where he hasn't given you a lot of productivity, but I feel like with Leonard, he's making more of an impact on the other things than Kelly is. In terms of the screen setting, in terms of the communication defensively. Like I just feel like he has limitations. There's no question about it. But I feel like he's making more of a consistent impact when I feel like Kelly has a bigger skill set than Myers does. So
that's the thing. I'm not sure
why that's happening.
I'm not sure that they're using it to the full extent right now. I think he's doing a very much similar thing that I'm sorry, when I say he, I mean Spo. He's doing a similar thing that he does with Bam, where they're using them more as ancillary players on the offensive end and not really, I don't think Kelly's been encouraged to weaponize his ball skills like he has over the past few years. We don't see the keeper anymore. We don't see him holding the ball and kind of probing cutters and defense as much as he did before, which is weird because like they have shooters and they have cutters now. They have an actual number one. So, like, again, you can get to that Jimmy post action if you play them together because you could have Kelly out at the top of the key holding the ball up, just waiting for Jimmy to get that matchup. But, yeah, it is weird because it's like the team always feels a lot worse defensively when he's playing at the 5 and, DJJ is your 4 or something like that. Like, it's not exactly ideal. It's fine for the regular season because, you're not depending on it and you're not playing big teams every night. But again, I think you're right about the Silva thing. Like, I think we're going to keep seeing lineups every once in a while, like what we've seen with DJJ at the 3, Kelly at the 4, Silva at the 5, which gives you a lot more size. Kelly doesn't have the responsibility to be a rim protector or a rebounder. But, yeah, I think just for me, I just want to see what the team looks like when they're fully healthy.
Well, I don't think that'll ever happen, Alex. I think that's the one thing we've learned this season.
We're going to see it all year.
Right, and they're 22-8 in spite of it, but I don't think that's going to ever happen. I think that's just the reality of it. I think the overall report card at this stage is an A. I don't know how you could grade it any other way. To me, I want to see Winslow back, and I want to see how they incorporate him. I want to see.
It's still the biggest question mark, right?
It's the biggest question on the team is where Winslow is and where he fits and how long this goes on for. And then there's going to be the question when he comes back about why he was out so long and is he going to get hurt again? And I thought we were kind of over this. He had the opening night 27-7-7, like a corner had been turned.
That was like 3 years ago, right?
Seems like it. As was the beginning of this pod. So we're going to end it right here. Thanks to another one of our sponsors, Seltzer Mayberg Law Firm. You can check them out at onecalllegal.com. That's onecalllegal.com. Service all of your needs. Immigration, traffic tickets, personal injury, all that stuff. They're based right here in North Miami, but they handle cases from all over the state. So that's onecalllegal.com. They handle your traffic ticket for $49 and up. They took care of a couple of mine. So you should definitely reach out to them. It's a Seltzer Mayberg Law Firm.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Regional Sports Network.